If I said the Wii U was an incredible console, a lot of you would laugh directly in my face. It had a pretty big variety of games to play, but at this point most of them have been brought over to the Switch. But as one of the 5 Wii U fans across the world, I spent the last few months playing all of Nintendo's Wii U games that got ported over to the Switch on both consoles. But are they better on the Switch or on the Wii U? The first game to be available on both consoles was Breath of the Wild. Before we knew Breath of the Wild as what it is today, it was only known as Zelda Wii U or Zelda U, which to me doesn't sound like it's gonna be a Switch game. Nintendo would never put U in the title of a Switch game.
Hey, you keep talking like that and I will smack you in the teeth.
But we ended up getting a dual release between the Switch and the Wii U on the same day, which was incredible because I was expecting a delay similar to how they delayed the GameCube release of Twilight Princess until a month after the Wii. And on release, both of these games worked incredibly well. Having beaten Breath of the Wild on the Switch and the Wii U multiple times, there are only a few subtle differences between the Wii U version and the Switch. There were 2 different special editions that released for the game. The special edition came with a bunch of things that were cool and related to the game, like a Sheikah Slate carrying case for the Switch, and this Sheikah Eye special coin, which I found out the hard way you cannot use as money.
Hey, just this please. Get out.
And getting all of that for $100 wasn't a bad deal. And for $30 more, you could get the Master Edition, and it comes with all of that and a Master Sword replica. And I love how there were 2 great collector's editions available for this game. The only issue is that these were not available for the Wii U. These were only available for the Switch version, which I get to a point, but I would have loved to see these available for the Wii U as well. Gameplay-wise, there are next to no differences between the Wii U and Switch. Depending on what version you're playing, the UI is going to be slightly different in the top left, with the Switch version having the 4 buttons that serve as the D-pad, and the Wii U version showing the D-pad itself, which is such a small detail which I don't think most people would notice. And being on stronger hardware meant the Switch version could run at 900p while the Wii U could only run at 720. And there was a slight enhancement to the audio in the game, but that was really it. Which means Breath of the Wild is 100% better on Switch, especially when you consider you're not able to buy the DLC for the game if you're playing on Wii U anymore. And for the 9 people who own the Nintendo Labo, you could play this in VR, which is certainly something. But of course these games are going to be similar because they're not a port of a Wii U game. So the first real port of a Wii U game we got on Switch was Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. During the life of the Switch, Deluxe was Nintendo's favorite word. Mario Kart 8, Pikmin 3, and Kirby's Return to Dreamland are just some of the Nintendo games that all have the word Deluxe in the title. But not a single one of them deserves the title Deluxe more than Mario Kart 8. When making Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, every part of Mario Kart 8 that was good was just enhanced. The first and most notable change was the addition of an actual battle mode in the game. The original Mario Kart 8 had a quote-unquote battle mode, but it was so bad it was slightly impressive. But in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, they revamped it from the ground up to feel like an actual game mode. There are 5 different game modes to play, like Balloon Battle, Bomb Blast, and Coin Runners, which are all incredibly fun. There were 8 courses to choose from, which unlike the original were actual battle mode maps. They added a load of new characters like Bowser Jr., the Inklings, and King Boo, expanding on the already incredible roster of the first game, and bringing back one of my favorite characters in Mario Kart history.
And I am not being forced to say that.
They added 2 selectable options for gameplay known as Smart Steering and Auto Accelerate, which is something I've only played around with once or twice, but if you've been playing Mario Kart for a while, I feel like it gets in the way more than helps. But for young kids and new players, it's a good idea. The Smart Steering is pretty much an aimbot in Mario Kart, where the game keeps you going on the right path for better or for worse. They also added a new level of Mini Turbo called Ultra Mini Turbo, which I was convinced was going to be called Mini Turbo Deluxe, which is the 3rd level of your drift that makes you go farther and faster, which I think was a great idea to balance out Smart Steering, because you can't use this 3rd level if you have Smart Steering on. One of the most major addition to races though is that you can now have 2 items at a time. The double item box finally returned from Double Dash, allowing you to now hold 2 items in your inventory at any given time. You could do this in other Mario Kart games by holding the item behind you, but allowing you to have 2 items while keeping them a secret is a great change. All of the updates and DLC that were added to Mario Kart 8 were available on day 1 with Deluxe, including all the DLC characters and tracks along with 200cc mode, and luckily the Mercedes-Benz cars that were added as a promotion, which honestly could have been a deal breaker for me if they weren't included, because I probably won't be able to drive a Mercedes in real life, so I might as well just live out my fantasy in Mario Kart. But getting everything that was added to Mario Kart 8 on the Wii U and all of this new content made this an incredible deal right off the bat. And then for some reason 5 years later we got the Booster Pass, which doubled the amount of tracks and added a bunch of new characters for $25, or for free if you have a certain level of the Nintendo Switch Online subscription. Granted, a lot of these stages that were added in the booster course were just kind of fine, mostly because a lot of these stages were either tour maps or older tracks that were ported to this version, and they didn't add a lot of new tracks. However, the ones they did were absolutely incredible, which overall makes Mario Kart 8 Deluxe the definitive way to play Mario Kart 8 because it blows everything about the original out of the water. The next release we got was Pokken Tournament, which is a solid Pokemon game that fell completely under the radar. This originally was an arcade fighting game that got brought over to the Wii U and subsequently the Switch, but over time the arcade version got way more support than the Wii U version ever did. But when Pokemon Tournament DX came around, we really got the best of both versions. Darkrai, Empoleon, Krogunk, and Caesar, who originally were only available in the arcade version, were now coming to the Switch, along with the brand new Decidueye, who would be added exclusively to the Switch, along with the addition of new support Pokemon, made the cast of selectable characters way more balanced and engaging. They also added a new 3v3 mode to let you really duke it out with your friends. And of course, being on the Switch allowed for the higher sound quality and graphical output the console had compared to the Wii U. I think the best change though is that you could now play split screen a lot easier than you could on the Wii U. On the Wii U, you had to have one player playing on the gamepad and the other playing on the TV, and that was fine, but it would have worked way better if two players were sharing the same screen. But luckily that was added to this version, so it is so much easier to play. The only real reason I can think of for someone to buy the Wii U version over the Switch, which is if you were really into collecting amiibo and amiibo cards. There was a Shadow Mewtwo amiibo card that was available with the Wii U version of this game, but wasn't available with the Switch version, and since a lot of people aren't die-hard amiibo collectors, but if you're only buying it for the game, I would just buy it on the Switch. Next, there was the port of Bayonetta 2, which really added nothing. The only major change is that the Wii U version did not have amiibo functionality, which gave you access to new costumes and weapons, along with some in-game rewards, but it was nothing to make me say,
"Honey, get in the car, we have to go to the store." "Sir, your wife is in labor." "There is no time for that, we have to go."
I've only dabbled in the world of Bayonetta, but in my humble opinion, though there wasn't a reason to upgrade, it's definitely better to buy it on the Switch. Next is one of my favorite games of all time, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. And as much as I love every part about this, I cannot defend Nintendo's pricing strategy. This game originally released on the Wii U for $50, which at this time and to today's standards is a good deal. And eventually it ended up being part of Nintendo Selects, which dropped the price all the way down to $20. So somebody at Nintendo needs to explain why Tropical Freeze on the Switch costs $60. Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze is one of my favorite video games of all time. I own it for the Wii U and the Switch, and I have no problem buying it twice. But I could buy 3 copies of this game on the Wii U for the same price as buying one on the Switch, which is a deal I will never understand. Granted, there are some minor improvements to the Switch version, mainly that you could now play in funky mode.
What are you playing? "Oh, just Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze." And the dancing it's more immersive this way.
Funky mode now allows you to play as Funky Kong, which, don't get me wrong, is an incredible change, except for the fact that when you play as Funky Kong, he is the single most overpowered character in the game. Playing in Funky mode gives you an extra heart and a bunch of other buffs like the ability to double jump and not be affected by spikes. And as much as I love the idea of playing with Funky Kong, I don't love that he makes the game incredibly easy. They also made some visual changes to Donkey Kong, which if you're not expressly looking for it, you don't really notice. And of course, with being on the Switch, you get the portability and higher resolution, but if you own this on the Wii U, I don't think it was worth picking this up. If you have kids you want to play with, the funky mode is really nice, but there really wasn't enough in the Switch version to make it worth the cost to upgrade. Next, we got Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition, and similar to Mario Kart 8, this is 100 times better than the Wii U version. Both the Wii U and 3DS had their own version of Hyrule Warriors, and on their own, they were both fine. But Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition took the best parts of both games and made one perfect match. Similar to Hyrule Warriors Legends on the 3DS, you could now have up to 4 warriors selected at one time, which is by far one of the best design choices in this game. You aren't stuck playing as the same character if you want to switch up the gameplay. The Warriors games are not really known for their diverse gameplay loops. They're more so for people who want to cut down 100 enemies at a time, and keeping the ability to switch between one of 4 characters from the 3DS version version is extremely refreshing. All of the DLC characters that were added to both versions were now available in this, along with all of the best content from both the Wii U and 3DS versions, along with new weapons, adventure maps, and story content, made this better than both of the other two versions combined. Say what you want about the Warriors games, but there is something about cutting down hundreds of enemies at a time that is always going to be fun for at least 10 minutes. One of the Wii U's hidden gems, Captain Toad, got brought over to the Switch, and I will die on the hill that no matter what version of Captain Toad you get, it's going to be a great time. There were some things that were only available in the Wii U version, mainly some stages that were cut that were themed off Mario 3D World, and the puzzles were fine. I don't really understand why they ended up getting cut, because they definitely could have just kept that in the game, even if they only made it available once you had a 3D World save on your Switch. You're not missing much by not being able to play them, but it would have been nice to have. But on both versions, this was replaced by new stages that were themed off of Super Mario Odyssey. And unlike the 3D World stages, these were pretty good. Getting to explore locations like New Donk City and the Luncheon Kingdom felt really nice. It still felt like authentic Captain Toad missions, but with enough fan service to Super Mario Odyssey to make me go,
oh hey, it's Akron, Ohio.
A common theme across all the games that got ported from the Wii U to the Switch was that most of these games didn't make that much use of the gamepad, but Captain Toad did far more than the rest. This is one of the few games on the Switch that I think works better when playing in handheld, because doing so gives you the ability to use the touchscreen to at least some capacity. But while playing dock, there's a cursor on the screen that you have to move around with your controller, and it's not bad, it's just not as intuitive as it was on the Wii U and the 3DS. And with the Switch not having a microphone, they had to switch out propeller platforms with lifts, which is a change I will always appreciate because I never want to blow on my consoles. But one of the most confusing changes came to the end of the game, where at the end of the Wii U version, it's revealed this was a prequel to Super Mario 3D World, where in the Switch version, they for some reason changed it to be a prequel to Super Mario Odyssey, which is a change I don't hate, but also don't understand. It just seems like it was a weird detail to change, because Treasure Tracker was only made because of Super Mario 3D World, and there are no Captain Toad levels like this in Super Mario Odyssey. It's a small detail, but I'm still confused why they made this change to this day. The Switch version also got an expansion called the Captain Toad Special Episode for $6 on the eShop, which added a few new levels to the game. So if you were someone who wanted even more Captain Toad, there was more to play, and though these levels don't do anything crazy to require a purchase, if you like the game, you're going to like the additional levels. However, what makes this game the best on the Switch is the fact that you can play 2-player co-op. If you ever wanted to play Captain Toad with a friend, you finally could. It makes a lot of sense because this is the perfect puzzle game to play with a friend, because having a second person really only enhances the experience. Granted, this does require having someone to play with.
Hey, do you want to play cat?
No!
Okay. All right. Okay.
I guess Nintendo learned from their mistakes with Donkey Kong Country, because this was priced at $40 just like the Wii U version was, so unless you're someone who really wants to play on the original hardware, the Switch version is an improvement in every possible way. Also, it has Labo support for all 6 people who wanted it. Next, we had the port of New Super Mario Bros. U Deluxe, which to me wins the award for the worst video game title of all time. I think New Super Mario Bros. U is a good game. It's definitely my least favorite of the new Super Mario Bros. Games, but to me, that doesn't mean it's bad. But having played this on both the Wii U and Switch, I prefer playing this on the Wii U. There were some new additions to this game, the first being Toadette being a selectable character, who's given her own exclusive power-up, the Super Crown, which allows Toadette to transform into Peachette, which just plays like a better version of the flying squirrel suit in the base game. Toadette was added to serve as an easy mode for the game, which as an idea I like, but doing so made it so they combined the yellow and blue Toads to one slot, serving as a cosmetic option rather than a playable character. So if you're playing with 4 players, you're gonna have one who has a handicap. Granted, this is only an issue I've faced once or twice. If you're at all good at Mario, it's not that fun to play with such a bonus. But if you were looking for something even easier, you could now play as Nabbit in the new Super Mario Bros. Levels, which I can understand to a point, but having 2 separate characters serve as an easy mode doesn't really make sense to me. All they had to do was keep the original Toads as 2 separate characters and it would have been way better. But considering I don't usually play this with 4 people, to me it's not not that big of an issue. From a control perspective, I also like playing on the Wii U more, because there is one major change I don't agree with, and that is making the mid-air spin the same button as the jump, because a lot of times while playing, I will die making a jump I know I can make, solely because the game thinks I pressed the button twice when I know I did not. You can disable this on the home screen by doing a certain button input, but I shouldn't have to hit a Street Fighter combo to make the game playable. With time, it's gotten a lot easier to play on Switch, but it just doesn't feel as crisp as it did on the Wii U. Deluxe also comes with this game's DLC, Super Luigi U, which I like better than the original game. Luigi U is much more faster and chaotic than Mario was, but it does so in a way that enhances the tension of the game without making it ridiculously hard. There was a ton of ways to get both of these games for very cheap on the Wii U, using either bundles or download codes, but with 100% certainty, I can say that it's better to play this on the Wii U than it is to play on the Switch. I honestly go as far as to not recommend picking it up on the Switch if you have a Wii U. Playing it on the Wii U is not only more affordable, but it also is the better experience, especially if you're playing with friends. If this was the full collection of every new Super Mario Bros. Game, from the DS all the way to the Wii U, this would hands down be one of the best games on the Switch. But like this, it's not. Next, there was Pikmin 3 Deluxe.
No. Oh, not again. Doctor, what do I do? He's doing it again.
As a certified Pikmin fanboy, I was going to buy this regardless if they added nothing to the game, but luckily when porting this over to the Switch, they added a good amount of content. They added a brand new prologue and epilogue section to the game, which added a good amount of content to the story, which is something that I desperately wanted. Since it launched on the Wii U, I have beat through Pikmin 3 about once a year, but having a version with more content is all I wanted when it came to the Switch, and that's exactly what I got and then some. Just like all of the deluxe versions, it included all of the DLC from the first game, also including the brand new co-op mode, which made it so two people can play through the story mode together, and having multiplayer Pikmin is something that I didn't think I was going to love, but I enjoyed far more than I thought I would. And you combine that with all of the quality of life adjustments, like the whistle expanding far faster than it did in the original, and they had something incredible here. My only issue with this is not the fault of Nintendo or the Switch, but I personally prefer to play with the Wiimote and Nunchuck. I have no problem playing with the Pro Controller. In fact, I do think it plays incredibly well, but 100% of the time, I am going to prefer the Wiimote and Nunchuck because it is just an overall better experience. You can kind of replicate this with the Joy-Cons, but it doesn't sync up as well. So the only actual issue I have was on the Wii U, you could get this for $20 with Nintendo Selects, but it was $60 on the Switch. But I think with all of the changes to the story and the quality of life enhancements, makes the Switch version far better, even if I have to suffer by not using the Wiimote. But Nintendo seemingly saved their best for last, bringing Super Mario 3D World over to the console. Now there was one obvious major enhancement to the Switch version, being the new Bowser's Fury game mode. This was like a buy one get one free deal with a completely new game added on top of an already incredible title. Nintendo accidentally ruined ports for me because now anytime a game gets ported, I want something like this added to the game. Bowser's Fury is a cat-filled dream for Mario fans, where even though it's short, every second of it is an incredible time. This feels more like a true 3D Mario game, more similar to Super Mario Odyssey than 3D World, but it uses the power-ups and mechanics from 3D World to make a completely unique game. The world you explore is decently sized and full of stuff to do. You get to see Super Saiyan Cat Mario battle Bowser.
Good, I can finally cross that off my bucket list. Oh, I guess it wasn't even on there.
And though I can't say it's as good as games like Super Mario Odyssey, I will say as an accessory to an already incredible game, it was the perfect addition. But Super Mario 3D World itself was also a much better time on the Switch. It's a co-op 2D 3D Mario experience that if you haven't played, you're doing yourself a disservice. They went through every single detail about this game and made it work really well on the Switch. The main problem I have with 3D World on the Wii U is that it felt like it was just too slow. It wasn't to the point where I would complain about it, but now that I've played the Switch version, I'm gonna complain about it. When I originally played through this on the Switch for the first time, I thought I was going crazy because the characters were moving a lot faster than I thought. But no, Nintendo just improved the game by a lot. It did take me a little bit to get used to the new speed, but now that I have, it is hard to go back to the original. On the Wii U version, the Captain Toad levels were only single player, however in the Switch version they are now multiplayer, which is another issue I had with 3D World on the Wii U. Having a co-op Mario game but having single player puzzles is something that I never understood about the Wii U version, but having that fixed is something I didn't even consider before this game released. One thing about the original is that there was a lot of Miiverse functionality, something that on the Switch does not exist, but luckily everything they had for Miiverse, like the camera and the stamps, were changed so they were still usable in the main game. This is not going to win a Nobel Prize in game design, but they could have just cut all of this content from the game, but instead they decided to rework and enhance it to make a better experience. Similar to Captain Toad, all gamepad support was removed from the game, which makes it flow a lot better. While playing docked, it had a similar issue to Captain Toad, but instead of the cursor being on the screen at all times, you hit the R button in order to enable it, which makes it far better when you're playing the game, because you don't have a cursor distracting you the entire time. But if you're playing in handheld mode, you can just use your finger to make it a lot easier. Arguably, the best change is that there is now online multiplayer. It's a Nintendo game, so it's not going to have the best online play, but considering there's finally an option is something I will always appreciate. I think that Super Mario 3D World is an incredible game, especially on the Switch. That's not to say it was bad on the Wii U, but adding Bowser's Fury alone makes this 100 times better than the original. So I don't think there's a reason to pick up the Wii U version unless you're collecting. I am really glad Nintendo brought a lot of fan favorite Wii U games over to the Switch. Some of them improved a lot more than others, but giving these games a second chance to shine was a great idea. Most of the time it's better to buy these games on the Switch, except for a few notable occasions. But what are some Nintendo games you want to come to modern hardware? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you for watching. I hope that you and your family have an incredible rest of your day, and if you like anything that you saw here, please consider subscribing.